We've all done it. Well, I mean, unless Doug L. Fossett is watching this posthumously. We've all bought something from a company and then found out something about that company that made us go, ick. I bought some perfectly adequate ink for a fountain pen. Yes, I am exactly the kind of person that likes fountain pens, from a company which turned out, a couple of years later, to be distressingly down with anti-Semitism. And if I'm honest, I used to buy a lot of stuff from Amazon. A hell of a lot of stuff. This was back in the mists of time when the Amazon logo was letter A. It was superimposed on the river, the Amazon River. And they were ordering fake books from distributors as they tried and honestly succeeded in disrupting the publishing industry. Then more recently, as they've become less, shall we say, nice, I've tried to avoid them as far as possible. For a while I was pretty good, and for a long time I'd only occasionally have to reset my counter, you know, the one which is I accidentally ordered from Amazon through a third party. But these days, the fact that so many folks I know are only able to physically publish their novels through Amazon, and I like dead trees, that means that the counter's kinda gone in the trash. And of course, who hasn't bought something from the Jupiter Mining Corporation? The maintenance on their ships does seem kinda sketchy, and, you know, I'm pretty sure that at some point that's going to lead to some kind of radiation leak, so maybe we shouldn't? But to bring things a little closer to the EV world, just after I bought my Kia Niro EV, there was a spike in Russian aggression, and while some companies did something at least adjacent to the right thing and stopped selling their vehicles in Russia for a bit, Hyundai, Kia, Genesis or HKG continued their vehicle sales with nary a pause, something that made me feel very uncomfortable about owning a Kia for a while. I even mentioned it in my first staff car update. Given what's happened since, it still makes me feel a bit, well, ick. And back in 2022, I made a video about ethical consumerism, which you can watch here, or by following the link in the down below. But given everything that's been happening of late, we figured it was time for us to issue an over-the-air update. Besides, I'm told there might be some folks out there who have a little bit of buyer's remorse for their recent, or maybe not so recent, vehicular purchases. And I'm not just saying that because it turns out one recently launched vehicle is potentially more fire-prone than the famously unsafe at any speed Pinto. How's that for technological prowess? No, I'm saying it for a number of reasons. And the question then is, what do you do if that's you? What's the ethical thing to do? Keep the vehicle? Sell it? Donate either it or money to a charity that's fighting against the thing that your car maker is quietly or overtly backing? Crushing it into a tiny cube and mailing it payment on receipt to the Heritage Foundation? Let's find out. Look, we talk a lot about politics on this channel, and weirdly, this video actually isn't going to get into that, at least not a ton, because, well, sure, right now, there's very valid reasons that, like a third of Norwegian owners, you might want to, under the cover of darkness, take your previously cherished car from one particular automaker to a rather rapid trade-in sale and switch it for another EV. And the reasons for that are the ones that, as a person targeted by the current administration for the temerity to exist, I really very much understand and, frankly, support. I mean, you only have to look on Reddit or Blue Sky or Mastodon or insert the name of any other social media network that isn't run by a white supremacist, and you'll find posts from people who have traded in their swashbuckling ride for something that's a little less fashionable with certain groups of people. Just last week, someone was posting on Reddit about trading in a reasonably new mid-size electric sedan from the company that we're definitely not saying bad things about, because when we do, some people, like the rodents of unusual size, get unusually upset and bitey, for a 2020 Chevrolet Bolt EV. But this is a perennial topic. Companies engage in bad behaviour all the time, and we've discussed the effectiveness, or mostly lack thereof, of ethical consumerism in the past. It isn't just the car company named after a certain Serbian futurist. Other car companies have questionable attitudes towards child labour laws. Others cheat on their emissions testing for internal combustion vehicles. And look, just because they're pretty much all bad in some way or another doesn't mean that I think we should all just go out and ignore the bad behaviour. Supporting companies that say dump tons of toxic waste into water in violation of local pollution rules and hope to get away with it just because they're, producing a quote-unquote green product. Or maybe because they're wearing a shiny B Corporation hat and are nice to their employees. It's still not okay. Those companies should be punished regardless of the good they are doing for society. If the law doesn't actually step in and make those behaviours financially unpalatable for the companies involved, then as consumers we're broadly stuck with our rather limited personal enforcement mechanism. The same goes for inappropriate behaviour for senior leaders in those companies. If a CEO or CFO or whatever breaks the law or engages in deeply antisocial behaviour, the board should remove them regardless of what they've done for the stock price. Egregious bad behaviour from us peons down at the lower levels of the ladder is quick to end in termination, and the same should be true for the leaders. And when a company decides not to do that, it tells you a lot about the company's practices, and one of the limited mechanisms in our society for enforcing any kind of consequences is that of not purchasing the products from that company. And some might say that this behaviour is a mirror of the right-wing's nonsense regarding banning woke things. Incidentally, did you all know that is woke now, apparently? Unfortunately, due to the likelihood of this video being censored if we mention due to its woke nature, and if we talk about the neo-nationalists who are now boycotting and, removing it entirely from their, we just can't risk that. But the nice thing about that is because we ourselves are lovers of it's so much easier to get a hold of now. At least now they've got over their buy it so we can trash it mentality. So let the anti-woke mob live in misery without having those delightful things. And the stupidity of being upset at people for respecting others' basic human right and the right for people to exist. But the question still exists. What to do if you've spent tens of thousands of dollars on a product that, say, is no longer representing your values in a way that you're comfortable with? Other than sticking a sticker on the back that says, I bought this before ... So obviously there's the nuclear option of buying the company and grinding it into a sad right-wing echo chamber of its former self that is worth 1/10 of its former value and that most people despise. But obviously you need to be a Nepo baby with diamond mined wealth and millions of fans willing to fight your corner for that to happen. Jokes aside though, the majority of people, us here at the channel included, can't afford to just up and swap a vehicle willy-nilly, especially if they don't actually own that vehicle and are instead paying back a loan. A loan which, thanks to recent events and the drop in value of certain vehicles, may mean that they're a long way underwater. If you're someone who leases the car, you're probably in the easiest place to swap it for something else. Some auto dealerships even offer lease buyout options if you're close to the end of your lease and just want to be rid of the car. The same is true in some cases for cars that still have finance payments pending. If you happen to have some spare cash to get out of a loan, or you happen to already own the vehicle outright, you could just potentially sell the car, potentially at a significant loss, and replace it with one from an automaker that you feel is less awful. Or you could sell it and use public transit, or cycle, or walk more, then use the time that you're spending in transit advocating for high-speed rail and better urban transit, if that's an option for you. By selling your car at a loss, you could potentially get someone into an EV who isn't able to afford a new one, particularly in the US, where the market for affordable EVs is smaller than is measurable with an electron microscope. Trickle-down economics is just as much nonsense in EV ownership as it is everywhere else, but also in a market where the median annual wage is only $10,000 more than the average new cost of an EV. The only way a lot of people can get into an EV is to purchase someone else's cast-offs. It's how my wife and I got nearly all the EVs we've owned over the years, and one of our current ones. And look, let's point out the good place argument here. You have watched The Good Place, haven't you? And that is that while you might be getting someone else into an EV, selling a perfectly usable vehicle and replacing it with a new one does come with significant environmental costs. While EVs are cleaner, even when we factor in the costs of materials and extraction, and even if powered by the current administration's favourite, coal power, they're still a significant drain on our resources to produce. So mostly we should be looking to keep vehicles on the road as long as possible, which, given modern batteries will likely outlast the car's body, should mean that they're staying on the road a long time. But in the end of the day, nothing is without cost. And while I'm the first to say that encouraging other automakers to continue producing EVs right now is something that is highly desirable, given that there may just be a teensy tiny bit of pressure from the mob, the administration, to not do that. And that showing people that multiple brands produce EVs is genuinely useful. People have got genuinely excited about my Nero EV. Which usually stuns me because it's the most prosaic looking object in the world. I just happen to think it handles quite well. But because many folks are not really aware there is a decent range of electric offerings available if you're willing to be pretty brand agnostic, one way to let people know that there are other EVs out there is to be a driver of one. But I'm also the first to understand that for many that is just not an option. So instead, let's talk about some less nuclear options. Unless you purchased the flammable death wagon, in which case, sure, let's just get rid. Okay, so for me, one of the first things to do is to look at the way that product supports the company and reduce or remove the ways that's occurring. In the case of the ink I bought, obviously I just didn't buy any more ink from them, and when people asked for ink recommendations, I usually mention that I don't buy from that company because they're anti-Semitic. That's pretty easy. Doing that for a car company is trickier, but if you pay subscriptions to that company, I do, for example, for connected services from Kia, then one thing that you can do is nudge a company by cancelling those subscriptions, or at least cutting them back to the bare minimum for what you need. And when you do that, let them know why you're doing so. Hey, your company decided to mine the shit out of indigenous land for resources, and I don't think that's cool. And I'm not going to give you so much money, or any money, and I won't get my next car from you if you keep this up. For example, a lot of EV manufacturers allow you to use their own single manufacturer app to charge your vehicle. When you do that, they're typically taking a cut of the fees you pay to use a rapid charger, or getting some kind of nifty kickback deal from the network owner. Or obviously, in some manufacturers' cases, if you're using their own personal network, they're getting all the money and just peeling off a few cents to pay for the electrons. By switching to use the network provider's own apps or subscription services, or by, say, not using a particular network which might or might not be supporting the rise of then you can remove a few dollars here and there from their pockets. Sometimes, unfortunately, they've negotiated lower prices for charging through their app. But here's an interesting tidbit. For a while, using the Ford app was actually more expensive than charging using a subscription at an Electrify America charger for Nikki. So your mileage may vary, and you may even find yourself saving a bit and feeling smugly self-satisfied. I will, however, grant that the experience that you're going to get at some charging networks is definitely subpar. So while you can feel smugly self-satisfied, you're probably also going to have to prepare yourself for a little more friction in your charging process. Hopefully not as much friction as I got in the UK when one particular network, it turned out, required you to enter the number from the charger on the website to start charging, but it had misprinted the stickers that they'd put on the units, so entering the number on the unit resulted in an error. Had they updated the website to make you aware of the problem that it turned out, did know existed? No, they had not. That was a full-on sand in the lube level of smoothness. What about servicing? While you must usually get warranty work carried out at an approved, authorized dealership, the majority of countries around the world have rules that make it illegal for an automaker to force you to have your car serviced and maintained by a network of their choosing. And in the case of one particular car company that might be in the news quite a lot right now, a car company that's historically been reported as treating its staff pretty terribly, there are a growing number of former service personnel who have set up their own independent repair facilities for those vehicles. They have the same, sometimes even better knowledge of repair practices than official dealerships, and can often repair things rather than replace things that the official repair manual deems must be replaced because of the associated costs with said repair. And many now even offer aftermarket upgrades and accessories that aren't officially endorsed by said automaker. Growth in right to repair legislation in some parts of the world also means it's easier now than it used to be to get official repair parts and either fit them yourself or have a third party do it. It's also true of telematics. Projects like Open Vehicle Monitoring System allow people with older electric vehicles no longer officially supported by their automakers to keep some form of telematics. They allow people who don't want to use official telematics a way to keep their vehicles remotely monitored without paying companies who either make money capturing and selling their data, that's basically all automakers, or just have practices and preferences that you don't like. And in the case of the swashbuckling cars, there is a whole underground community of former employees and enthusiasts who operate an alternative telematics system for those cars that can be installed and utilized if you don't want your car to start suddenly pulling to the right. So let's say you've done those things. You've cancelled your subscriptions. You've got a plan to change the car over at the end of your lease and switch your manufacturer. You're getting your car serviced independently. What else can you do? Well, if you're in a position to do so, you can also donate to organisations that are working to undo or mitigate the harms that are being promoted by the company you're trying to escape. There's a bunch of those. We've dropped some links down below in the description to organisations you might want to consider donating to. You can obviously also repeatedly and forcefully tell the company that it is garbage. You can do that vocally. You can do that on social media. And look, social media is pretty ineffective for creating political and social change. If you want to peacefully create change, there is a huge amount of research on that topic. Social media isn't it. In fact, it's often a negative impact on folks' mental health that limits their ability to create change, while it does also provide some routes for organising. We'll drop a link in the down below about all that too, just in case you're interested. Down there. But it can be useful for dragging a company's name through the mud, and sometimes that can focus the collective minds of those in the company, or the collective minds of their shareholders, on improving their behaviour. I'm old enough to remember when GoDaddy was the web host known for confiscating queer domains. Now it's adequate. It's fine. I'm told it's a perfectly good web host. And that change came about because of concerted pressure on the company. If you want to do that by sticking a sticker on the back of your car, sure, it's probably not going to do a ton. If you want to do it by shouting from the rooftops, great. If you want to do it by gifting your ex-car to an auction to raise funds for those impacted by the harms that company's encouraging, excellent. But broadly, ethical consumerism is a lie that we tell ourselves to try and make ourselves feel okay with an environment in which corporations are gifted the best benefits society normally allows to some people, but with none of the restrictions or consequences. And corporations tend to behave exactly as such. What needs to change is a much more fundamental thing about how we allow companies to do business, and that requires getting your representatives to do their thing and crushing the ability of corporations to lobby and make the rules they're meant to be controlled by, which is hard. Because currently, Legislators make a butt-ton of cash taking bribes, I mean donations, and the current administration just stripped back the rules even further. Remember, it's only a bribe if you take the money before doing the deed. Now, anything afterwards is just normal remuneration. So until that changes, doing a little bit of ethical consideration before you splash the cash on the latest media from the transphobe in the black mouldy castle, probably a good plan. And if you buy the divorced dadmobile from an automaker that's affiliated with hate, don't be surprised if someone spray paints a penis on it before laughing at you. Quite honestly, you'll get no sympathy from me if that happens. We all make our decisions and get to live with the consequences. Thanks for joining us today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them in our Discord room, on our Patreon page, down below, or you can reach us on Mastodon or Blue Sky. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They're part of the massive community of supporters who make this channel possible, helping us through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and helping us to remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, follow the links below. We've got options available across a range of different price points from $1.50 US a month. A massive welcome to our newest supporters: Dana Pearson, Bruce C, 95, Kaluk, Chip Chandler, Dave Nelson, Nathan Sievers, Boris Reingold, and Callie Electrodad. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your moment of fame and me mispronouncing your name. And you can even gift memberships to someone else. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at for the time being, addressed below. You'll also find links to our swag store, and if you're someone who has to shop on Amazon, please consider using our affiliate link so we get commission, not Jeff Bezos. So we can continue to focus on making our content even better and reduce burnout, we're being a little freer with our release days, but plan on dropping new content every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday on our main channel, plus something on Sunday over on TE Take 2. If you want more, the algorithm that hates us thinks you should be watching this video, but this video is one we'd like you to check out. Be awesome, be kind, be intentional, and don't forget to resist. Keep evolving!